Good afternoon. Welcome to an open panel on open government in the second term of the Obama administration. This is a Sunshine Week panel that is being hosted by the Center for Effective Government and the Electronic Privacy Information Center. I'm Katherine McFate. I'm the president of the Center for Effective Government, and I'd like to welcome you here this afternoon. We're pleased that the sun has come out for Sunshine Week. And I think we have an excellent panel of 3 participants for this first panel on implementing open government, the challenges and opportunities of a second term. We'll have a second panel after this one, which will be moderated by Ginger McCall from EPIC, and that will be on national security, challenges, and solutions. So, 4 years ago, President Obama entered office offering an inspiring vision of what a more open and participatory government could look like. This administration has, in fact, dedicated more time and effort to improving government transparency than any other administration in history. We have a new report out called Delivering on Transparency, and in that we identified a string of presidential directives, memos, White House recommendations over the last 4 years, and they've been continual, not just in the first year, aimed at improving access to information and government openness and allowing citizens to participate in government in a different way. And yet our report also found that implementation of these policies across federal agencies has been quite uneven. Many of the factors that need to come together for effective government might be in place, but they're not there in every agency. We know that we need commitment from top leadership within an agency. We know we need staff to engage and support this effort. We know we need incentives for performance and perhaps penalties for noncompliance. And we need adequate resources. But perhaps most of all, we need an environment, a culture within an agency, and an environment that actually supports experimentation and iterative learning and improvement. So, I'm going to introduce our amazing panel. We've got 3 people here who I'm sure you'll agree are incredibly qualified to talk about these topics. First, Lisa Ellman. Lisa Ellman currently serves as the Chief Counselor for the Open Government Partnership at the White House. This is a major international initiative of the Obama administration that's designed to measurably improve transparency and citizen engagement across 58 countries. There are 58 partners in this initiative so far. Lisa previously worked as a senior counsel in the Office of Legal Policy at the Department of Justice, and was also involved in developing the U.S. national plan. Every country has its own plan as part of the Open Government Partnership, and Lisa helped develop the one for the U.S. She'll talk about that today. Before that, she served as White House Legal Director in the Office of Presidential Personnel and was part of the Obama-Biden transition team and worked on the first presidential campaign. She received her BA from the University of Michigan and her law degree from the University of Chicago, and co-authored a book with Cass Sunstein. Our second panelist is Miriam Nisbet. Miriam is the founding director of the Office of Government Information Services, what we like to call OGIS, at the National Archives and Records Administration. OGIS was created, it was actually authorized by law in 2007, but it didn't come into existence in 2009. It was created to be an ombudsman within the federal government for freedom of information requests. Before taking the helm at OGIS, Miriam was director of Information Society Division of UNESCO in Paris. She served on the Obama transition team. She was legislative counsel at the American Library Association from 1999 to 2007. She was a member of the U.S. delegation to the Hague Conference on Private International Law. She worked at the National Archives and Records Administration between 1993 and 1999. where she was special counsel for information policy. You get the drift. Miriam is incredibly grounded in all things that have to do with the flow of information in the federal government. We're delighted that she's here. She's also a member of the American Bar Association, American Law Institute, president of the American Society for Access Professionals, and representing libraries. She was the president of the Americans for Fair Electronic Commerce Transactions. So, welcome, Miriam. Our final panelist today is Krista Boyd. Krista serves as the counsel for the Democratic staff at the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Her oversight and legislative responsibilities include public access to government information, transparency, and the regulatory process. She's assisted in drafting and negotiating legislation designed to improve the transparency of the federal government, including bills that improve access to presidential records, that strengthen the Freedom of Information Act, you'll hear about that today, and that improve the transparency of federal advisory committees. She also was responsible for a bill to require agencies to write documents in plain language that President Obama actually signed into law in October of 2010. She previously served as counsel for U.S. Senator Max McClelland, and she's a graduate of Emory University and Florida State University. So welcome, Krista. And now we'll begin our panel.
With international partners, and personally announced the domestic National Action Plan on Open Government. This shows very clear top-level presidential support, and while this is not everything to success, as we all are well aware, it is important. And just the fact that we are here asking how to implement strong policies is a good problem to have, so it's a good thing. Now, this top-down support from the White House on open government remains. We have a whole team of people working on these issues in and out every day. We have an Executive Office of the President working group. We have an interagency working group across the administration of officials designated that work on open government issues. We are about to publish our self-assessment report in the spring, so the White House continues to send very clear policy signals, and this is important. Now, as we work to create an environment across government supportive of openness, another important element here is process. When the President released the Open Government National Action Plan, he did so in true partnership with civil society. This partnership has been critical to the program's success as we've implemented the plan. In the last year or so, we brought together civil society experts with the agency experts leading each initiative. So we had at least 26 individual meetings to talk about implementation of all 26 initiatives, fostering relationships between the civil society experts leading each initiative and the team leads within the agencies, allowing them to learn directly from each other. These relationships were critical to the success we've had implementing that plan, and we believe it's critical moving forward as well. From the government side, we're very grateful for a productive working relationship with civil society, and we look forward to continuing that. Now, the second theme of your report is improving public use of government information, and as you note in that report, we've made great progress in this regard. One of the areas where we have seen particularly strong implementation at the agency level in the Obama administration is technology. In the past few years, technology has redefined not only how we live our lives as Americans and run our businesses, but is changing our expectations of how we interact with our government, what government is, and how it should work for them. And agencies have stepped up to the task. Now, we've learned a few very helpful lessons about agency implementation through our technology initiatives. The first is that we found it is critical that agencies understand that open data is not an extra requirement. Open data is something they can harness to advance their core mission. I'll use the Health Data Initiative as a good example of this. We all know that HHS's mission is to improve health. So with a limited budget, in an era of cutting budgets, why should the agency prioritize openness, even if the White House says to? Todd Park, my current boss at the Office of Science and Technology Policy, was formerly at HHS as the CTO. Now, HHS has lots of data on everything from smoking rates and obesity rates to local access to healthy food and hospital quality. The question that Todd asked when he arrived was how best to unleash the power of HHS's vast stores of health data to help improve health in America. He used the weather as an example, or more specifically, what the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has done with weather data. NOAA collects enormous amounts of weather data, which it then makes available to the public on the internet in downloadable, machine-readable form, free of charge and without intellectual property constraint. A diverse array of innovators outside of NOAA then turn that data into weather websites, newscasts, mobile applications, research, and other products and services that create great benefit for the public. The Health Data Initiative is turning HHS into the NOAA of health data, and HHS is supplying to the public a growing array of online, easily accessible, downloadable health data. Simultaneously, HHS is proactively marketing the availability of this data to innovators outside HHS. So from that data, we now see community health maps and dashboards, healthcare provider finders, and more. But the key here is that by opening data, HHS is advancing its core mission. Openness is helping HHS to improve healthcare. So this was key, is demonstrating to agencies that openness helps them get their work done for them. The data paloozas were important tools in this regard. A data palooza is a forum that features new and innovative uses of health data by companies and startups and academics. Not only did these data paloozas foster entrepreneurship, which was their original purpose, but they also showed the people at the agency who had the data what the return is on releasing that data. So whereas a few years ago we couldn't barely get 45 entrepreneurs to attend the first data palooza, a few years later we had 1,400 innovators in a room leveraging open data. The key was to demonstrate to the agency that there was a return on openness in advancing their mission, that they should prioritize open data and in fact cannot afford not to. This leads to a second lesson, which is none of the change cannot happen overnight. Culture change can take time. I'll offer Blue Button as an innovation example in this regard. Blue Button is a program launched by the Department of Veterans Affairs which allows veterans to download their personal health information. Now, when the VA first started looking into a program such as Blue Button, they progressed very slowly. At first, they would release only very limited data, but bit by bit, they received very favorable feedback from outside stakeholders. Lots of yays and no nays. Lots of encouragement from the outside. In those early stages, it's true it was very limited and in no way perfect, but they were receiving positive feedback on the progress they were making. This led to iterative improvement over time and confidence building within the agency, which led to a great product. And just last August, the 1 millionth patient used Blue Button to download their personal health record. One more lesson I'll mention here is that while policy planning is very important and top-down engagement is very important, it is more effective if that policy is packaged with implementation tools for the agencies. In order to change agency culture, we've learned the 1-2 punch, which is good policy establishing goals and expectations, and tools facilitating that change, and that this is what in the end will lead to true culture change. So this is why we will soon be rolling out the open data part of the digital government strategy, and with tools that agencies can use. The Obama administration launched the digital government strategy in May of 2012 as a roadmap aimed at building a 21st century digital government that delivers better digital services to the American people. The administration has hit the ground running on this initiative. One of its main requirements is to release government data to enable the development of applications and tools that improve the quality of services for the public. We are currently in the process of finalizing the open data policy requirements with tools agencies can use, and we will be rolling this out soon. From an agency standpoint, it's just much better that way. Now, with all this in mind, we understand that change is hard and that quick fixes are not always readily available for the issues that our open government movement seeks to address. We share your and the public's enthusiasm for continuing to improve. We view a second term as yet another moment of opportunity during which we will continue in our march together to chart a new course for open and responsive governance. and we look forward to working together on this journey. Thank you.
Miriam, your office was created to try to push the federal agencies to do more and better in terms of meeting their Freedom of Information mandates. So do you want to talk about implementation from your perspective and how that's gone?
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. And I do want to congratulate you all on an excellent report. I really enjoyed it. It was, it's hard to sometimes, of course, I guess it's always hard to read critiques that say where you fall short. But on the other hand, I think it offers a really good perspective for just what you're doing today, which is having us say, what were the expectations, what remain the expectations, and what can we expect? So it was good reading and thoughtful reading. So thank you for that.
That was Sean Malton and Gavin.
And
Baker.
Gavin, and
so, they're the great authors of that.
Thank you. You know, we like to in OGIS talk about the Freedom of Information Act as the original open government law. And it really was, because, of course, now that we're looking at about 45 years of FOIA, and, of course, looking at how far it's come from its original enactment, it is, of course, all about access. But the beauty of the, I think, where we've come in the last 4 years with open government really is looking at a much broader perspective, a much broader challenge. A lot of what Lisa was talking about, and it's something that's talked about, I think, more and more across government, that really does make a difference, that really changes the conversation, is about building in openness so that we are not retrofitting, whether for FOIA or for anything else, anything else that the government does, not retrofitting for providing access, but rather building that accessibility in and doing really fabulous things, such as what's been done at HHS and other agencies. That also opens the opportunities for the collaboration. So just the environment, I think one has to say, we're in a different environment now, and that's a big accomplishment. OGIS was created in 2007, the end of 2007. I looked to Krista because she had a lot to do with the ultimate amendment of FOIA that created OGIS. But we did not come into being until September 2009. It was with this administration that gave the green light and said, what about this new office? Let's get it up and going. So we certainly look at that as an accomplishment. Let me focus on our mission as perhaps a way of talking about the kind of culture change that I think we all are looking for and that Lisa also referred to. Our office has really a dual mandate. One of the things that we do is provide dispute resolution, mediation services for specific disputes that either FOIA requesters or agencies bring to us where there's an obstacle, things are not moving forward. And we are charged with providing those mediation services. Of course, it's purely voluntary, as an alternative to litigation. The most recent figures for litigation by the government, and frankly I think these are probably quite low, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million annually to litigate. That's not to administer FOIA. FOIA administration is now just a little under $500 million. Litigation is still too heavy a cost. So we are charged with mediating specific disputes, but also supporting the whole approach, the whole culture change of bringing dispute resolution and preventing disputes at the earliest possible level in the agencies. So that's part of what we do. So it's specific dispute resolution and also supporting those in the agencies who are responsible for doing this as well. That plays into customer service, opening communication, collaboration with the public, all sorts of good things that foster open government. The second thing that we do, and you mentioned, Katherine, is we are charged with reviewing agency policies, procedures, and compliance, and recommending changes that could improve the administration of FOIA. So we sort of do that every day because we are interacting with agencies, we're interacting with requesters in the course of resolving disputes. But we also are looking all the time sort of at systemic issues, agency-specific, but also across the government agencies, across the executive branch. We really are sort of in the business every day of looking at how to improve FOIA. But I want to point us to a couple of things that we're going to be looking at going forward. I've mentioned dispute resolution, which is certainly a continuing effort, and we will continue to encourage agencies to really employ that as a means of communicating better with their requesters and avoiding disputes. We're also, of course, always promoting. Our parent agency is the National Archives and Records Administration. We're also reminding people all the time, and this is in our National Action Plan, that records management is a key part of open government. It's essential for good government, and that also plays very much into, there's a direct and strong connection between good records management and being able to administer the Freedom of Information Act, to be able to find the records, that the records have already been retained, they've been managed, you can find them, and then you can do something with them, you can manipulate them. Hopefully, if they're electronic, you can really do a lot more with them than simply turn them into a piece of paper to carry around. But we have two other issues that we're going to be looking at, not necessarily with an idea today at all of how to fix things, how to improve things, but two areas that we have seen and continue to see as issues. One is looking at fees and fee waivers. That remains a persistent problem for agencies and for requesters, and we really want to bring all the different parts of the process together and look at what are the issues. Are there some other ways that this might work better administratively or legislatively? No preconceived ideas, but we're going to be coming to those of you who are in the room and asking for your help on that. That's going to be, I think, a very vigorous conversation. The second area that we're looking at relates to immigration records. There are quite a few agencies. Of course, everybody immediately thinks of the Department of Homeland Security, but the State Department, the Department of Justice also, among other departments, are very, very involved in records related to immigration. And I think a lot of you might know that FOIA is the path for people who are looking for their immigration records. It's the main path. It's not the only, but it's the major path. And we have been talking with some of those agencies and also some of their major customers starting last year, looking at ways to make that process work better. That's not necessarily changing, suggesting or having a change in the law so much as the processes and seeing whether or not they might be able to work better. So that's sort of our focus. The last thing I want to mention that Lisa mentioned also is, of course, technology. we ought to be making it work better for us, and that is a challenge. There are lots of different ways that can be done. I think we have seen, again, a number of initiatives from this administration that focus on improving data quality, data availability, the digital strategy most recently. And again, all of those things play into the Freedom of Information Act. The last thing I just want to mention is a little bit of the, again, the culture change idea. Where I think particularly, Katherine, your organization and others who are represented in this room play such a strong part is continuing to remind people in government, people, members of the public, of just how fundamental openness is to our form of government. Other countries look to us. They look to us as models. We can sometimes take from them. Plenty of times we can take from them as well. But what we're doing really matters not just to people in our country, but to people in other countries as well. And I think that's a real strong, it's a heavy responsibility, but we enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to that. And Krista, you are involved in congressional oversight of executive branch agencies, so you have a quite different perspective, I would imagine, from our other two panelists. So do you want to tell us what implementation means from your perspective?
The Delivering on Open Government report emphasizes the importance of bipartisan congressional oversight. I think that's a really important point. Congressional oversight is critical to holding agencies accountable for properly implementing open government laws and policies. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee is uniquely situated because the committee has legislative jurisdiction over the core transparency laws, but the committee also serves as the primary investigative committee for the House of Representatives. The committee has oversight jurisdiction over any kind of government-wide policy. Particularly appreciated the point in the report about the importance of bipartisan congressional oversight. Certainly bipartisan oversight is far more effective than investigations or oversight that are conducted in a partisan manner. One recent example of bipartisan oversight that came out of the Oversight Committee was a joint letter that Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Cummings sent to the Department of Justice. That letter was asking a series of questions and for information about implementation of FOIA, both by DOJ and by agencies. Some of the issues that were covered in the letter include the failure of agencies to update their FOIA regulations. The Department of Justice itself is just now in the process of updating its regulations, which hadn't been updated since 2003. The Open Government Act was passed in 2007. So that's, and there are a number of agencies that haven't updated their regulations since that law was passed. That was a long time ago. Regulations take some period of time to update, but I mean, that's been a significant period of time, and Congress laid out pretty clearly what updates were being made to the law. Another issue that was covered is FOIA backlogs. That's an area where agencies are still in need of reducing their backlogs. Posting frequently requested records online. That's something, agencies have been encouraged by the President and the Attorney General to proactively post information, but agencies aren't always following through on proactively posting records that are being frequently requested. These are all areas that need improvements. Unfortunately, the Department of Justice has not yet provided documents to the committee in response to the letter. The department did provide a briefing for staff, but we still haven't yet to receive documents, so we're hoping we'll be getting those soon. Another example of oversight that the House Oversight Committee and Senate Judiciary Committee conducted, sort of a joint oversight legislative area, that's monitoring for new statutory exemptions. Agencies often are seeking specific statutory exemptions for types of information that they feel like they need to protect. We view it as our role in both of those committees to be monitoring for these exemptions and to ensure that if they are going to pass, that they are well-founded. This is something the agency genuinely needs to protect information, that it's balanced, that it's as narrowly tailored as possible. The challenge with these exemptions is that, if a bill comes through Congress and it has FOIA in the title, then it's very obvious to all of us that it's amending FOIA or has something to do with FOIA. But if you have a section or a subsection tucked into a defense or intelligence authorization bill or an FDA authorization bill, aren't necessarily looking for a FOIA exemption buried deep within those bills. So that's one of the challenges, is finding and identifying these exemptions, which sometimes can protect really broad categories of information. I can give a specific recent example. Last year, the FDA sought an exemption that FDA said it needed to allow it to obtain information from foreign governments about safety inspections related to drugs being sold in the United States. FDA said that it was sometimes unable to obtain information because of a perception by other governments that the information would become public under FOIA. The problem, however, with FDA's proposal was that it was drafted so broadly that it would have covered more than its intended purpose. The language would have allowed the agency to withhold any information related to drugs obtained from a federal, state, or local government agency or from a foreign government agency if the agency requested that the information be confidential. So basically any information that a state or local agency or a foreign government agency asked to be kept confidential would be, and that was any information related to drugs. I mean, that could be virtually anything. Through the efforts of open government advocates and work in both the Senate and the House, the language was narrowed to only exempt information provided by a foreign government under the condition that the information be kept confidential and would only cover information relating to inspections or investigations, or if it concerns a drug that would likely cause adverse health consequences. So that's an example where, something that was drafted very broadly through the joint work of outside groups and members of Congress, it was able to be more narrowly tailored to suit what FDA said it needed, but without covering such a broad category of information. Sometimes oversight isn't enough, and so sometimes Congress needs to act to strengthen the core open government laws that are in place already. Today, the Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Cummings released a draft bill to amend FOIA. It's called the FOIA Oversight and Implementation Act of 2013. You can go to the committee's website and access the bill. It's a draft bill. In the spirit of transparency, the bill is being posted online and open for comment. So, please, review the bill and submit comments. We welcome your feedback. Would really appreciate feedback on the bill. I want to highlight some of the areas that the bill covers. Incorporating into FOIA a presumption of openness. The bill would enact the policy in Attorney General Holder's 2009 memorandum on FOIA that requires agencies to process FOIA requests with a presumption of disclosure. The bill would make clear that agencies may only withhold information if the disclosure of such records could cause foreseeable harm to one of the interests identified in FOIA's exemptions. Increasing access to information. The bill would require agencies to post online in a publicly accessible format any releasable records that have been requested 3 or more times. The bill would strengthen the Office of Government Information Services. The bill would enhance the role of OGIS by requiring OGIS to provide guidance to agencies on the use of fees and fee waivers, and by providing OGIS with the independence of being able to submit testimony and legislative proposals without having to go through OMB or other agency review. Those proposals would be able to come directly to Congress. When OGIS was created, it was the intention of Congress that the agency or office be independent. I think the legislation maybe wasn't drafted as carefully as it could have been. I won't say carefully, but it's, maybe could have been a little bit more clear about how independent the office should be, but that's something that this bill aims to do, is to clarify that the office is intended to be independent and to be able to provide independent recommendations to Congress. Another area that the bill covers is informing requesters of their rights. Under the bill, agencies would be required to include in responses to requesters the right of each requester to seek assistance from the agency FOIA public liaison. Agencies would also be required to notify requesters who appeal an agency's decision under FOIA that they have the right to seek dispute resolution services from the agency, FOIA public liaison, or from OGIS. The bill also establishes a pilot project on FOIA Online. The bill would set up a 3-year pilot project to encourage more agency participation in FOIA Online. It would require OMB to select 3 agencies of varying size to participate for 3 years in the pilot, and then would require the agencies who participate to then report on their experiences. Another thing the bill covers would be tracking B3 exemptions. That was, what I was just talking about with the new statutory exemptions. One of the issues that we've heard about from open government advocates is the difficulty in knowing the universe of B3 exemptions that exist. So the bill would require the Government Accountability Office to develop a comprehensive list of existing statutory exemptions from FOIA. The bill also would establish a Chief FOIA Officer Council. It would require each agency to have a Chief FOIA Officer, and then would create a Chief FOIA Officers Council modeled after the CIO Council. The bill does other things. Those are some of the highlights, but I definitely encourage you to go to the committee's website and look at it today. It was just released. And another issue, just really quickly, another bill that is being introduced this week is one that's been introduced in the past by Representative Lacey Clay, and he plans to introduce it again, and it's the Federal Advisory Committee Act amendments. FACA is another area where committee oversight and oversight by GAO has revealed that agencies aren't living up always to the spirit of FACA in their use of advisory committees. And FACA would strengthen the independence of advisory committees by ensuring that agencies are properly designating members of advisory committees as either special government employees or representatives, so properly designating them so that the people who are there representing their own expertise are subject to conflict of interest disclosures. That's something that GAO has identified as a problem, is that agencies sometimes misidentify committee members to avoid having to disclose conflicts. Another thing the bill does is close some of the loopholes that have been developed, such as, under current policies, agencies can avoid FACA by doing all of the work of the committee through subcommittees. And the bill would make clear that you can't, that subcommittees also are subject to the requirements of FACA. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the bill. I was sitting here grinning at Gavin and Sean, who authored our report, because I think 4, I counted maybe, of the recommendations in the report are in the bill. So that's very nice. I'm going to open it up for questions. I have one thing that I want to come back to you all with. If you're on the webcast, you can email questions@foreffective.gov, and someone will be waiting there to take your questions and ask them. But does anybody in the room have questions that they want to ask our panelists now? Yes.
I'm Miriam from the National Security Archive. Krista, I was really interested in the new bill, and it seems to have a lot of great ideas in it. Some of them directly or indirectly from the report.
I'm sure it wasn't from the, maybe. We'll claim it.
Well, in a way that is sort of underpinning to my question, which is, if you can predict, what do you think the challenges will be from different parts of the administration or parts of Congress or elsewhere to some of these provisions? For instance, do you think that the Obama administration or people at Oversight, for instance, will balk at the idea of just coming straight to you instead of going through them and getting to this point? And did you have, I assume you had a series of meetings with people from the administration and elsewhere to talk about some of these ideas. Did any of those meetings raise some possibilities of questions or challenges that you'll face?
I'm not aware of any specific challenges yet. I mean, it's certainly possible that varying interest, there certainly will be interests that have, issues with, different pieces of the bill, and that's something that the members will work through. And that's one of the reasons why the bill is being posted for comment before it's even being introduced, is to allow for that discussion and to be able to address issues that arise. I think, one of the challenges that we face with almost any bill we introduce is the potential cost of the bill, and that's something that's it's somewhat of an unknown, how the Congressional Budget Office will, view a particular bill, and how, agencies will say that additional requirements may impact, how they have to spend, if they have to spend more to be able to implement those additional requirements. So, that's something that's, with any bill, it's just the unknown of whether it will be viewed to, cost money. I think, most of the ideas in the bill are things that, hopefully agencies can use existing resources to implement. But I don't, we've received some comments, but that's, I think, something that we'll be exploring in the coming weeks after, now that people will have the bill and can, look through the specific language.
Miriam, I don't want to put you, well, I guess I do want to put you on the spot, but not unless you're willing. Do you want to respond to the idea that you'll have more independence?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen what's been posted. I'm going to be really eager to do it. Like, the instant I walk out, we're going to start looking at it. So I probably do not want to comment until I've seen what we're looking at. But this is going to be a very interesting discussion.
Yeah. Others? Tom, is that a finger?
Just a question for Miriam. How do you explain the rise in litigation in Freedom of Information cases that the transactional records clearinghouse study showed compared to the last 2 years of Bush administration, which is pre-OGIS, and the last 2 years of the first term of the Obama administration? The number of FOIA lawsuits went up from 500-something to 700-something. So do you think that OGIS is having an impact? It's not reducing litigation yet. I think it's certainly leading to a better experience for the requesters that use your mediation. But what's your explanation for the rise in lawsuits? Could it be related to the lack of change in the Justice Department's litigation stance?
I would be just as interested as you in having a better understanding of that. The answer is no. We don't know yet. We're looking at that. We depend upon organizations like the Center for Effective Government, National Security Archive, among others, and TRAC, to do a lot of that looking and researching and analyzing, because we're really not able to do that as effectively as we would like. I will note that, of course, the number of requests have increased as well. So I think it's a complicated picture. It's a complex picture. I also know that it takes time for things to change, particularly if you're talking about really embedding the idea of preventing disputes and resolving disputes at all levels of an agency. There are some agencies that have just picked that up and run right with it, and we're already seeing perhaps some results in that, at least in terms of the culture, the collaboration, the public interaction, the communication, but that takes time. So I do strongly believe that whole approach, and not just OGIS, is going to have an effect. Whether we're able to see it immediately is a more complicated question. Would like your thoughts on that.
Have some opinions.
Lisa, you highlighted HHS and NOAA as two agencies that you thought did exemplary jobs in terms of openness. I wonder if there's any others you want to kind of highlight, and if Miriam and Krista want to say what their best case examples are, people that they think have really done a good job, and why it is that you think those agencies have been able to change their culture and really embrace openness while others have not. Do you have any sense of why some are doing so much better than others?
Well, I can say one, so with regard to HHS using the Health Data Initiative as a model, we're now looking at other communities of data, other similar initiatives, and learning from that experience. One thing I can say that has been helpful in this area is creating opportunities for agencies to learn from each other and allowing them to share best practices. When the agencies had drafted their first agency open government plans, as they were about to draft their second version of their agency open government plans, I believe it was last summer, we, in our interagency working group for open government, clustered all the agencies together that could learn from each other, and I think that proved helpful in the second round of plans. I think with the science guidelines memorandum that just came down from Dr. Holdren, providing citizens with access to the results of federally funded research, that's based on, it cites NIH, National Institutes of Health, as an example for how agencies could learn from best practices in terms of making that research available to the public. So I think that is one role that we see at the White House of bringing agencies together and highlighting where we see great progress, such as with NIH in this example, and where agencies can potentially learn from each other.
Great. I can give you a couple of examples. I think NASA has been particularly good at creating a real sense of strong desire and showing results of collaboration. They've done some really innovative things in terms of getting input, using crowdsourcing, doing some really fun things that you would say, well, how could you possibly get that many space nerds together to work on something? But they've had some interesting results. Our agency, our parent agency, the National Archives and Records Administration, has had a wonderful experience with our initiative called the Citizen Archivist. And if some of you haven't seen that, you should go take a look, because it is really using social media to engage members of the public in doing things like helping to identify photographs in the archive's holdings, to transcribe records. It's just been hugely popular, and it's using that collaboration to really improve the way the government is able to deliver services to members of our public. So I guess what I would say is that sort of underscores the whole importance of leadership, and having somebody at the very top of the agency who says, this is important, it matters, I'm going to support it, and I'm going to really encourage my staff to be as creative as possible.
Great. Krista? One example of it's been sort of an under-the-radar example, but the Department of Homeland Security had a system for processing their FOIAs that it was exposed as being maybe a little clunkier than it should have been. It took longer for some FOIA requests to go out because of the review process they were using. And when that was exposed, they changed to having a shared access site that allowed for various entities within the agency to review a request and get the response out faster. And I thought that was a good example of an agency recognizing something that wasn't working well and fixing it.
Great. Well, if we don't have any, do you have a question? Go.
So, Sean Moulton, Center for Effective Government. And one thing I wanted, just an idea I wanted to throw out there as we talked about agencies and their performance, and it goes back to something Lisa said in her comments, which was about agencies really coming to understand the benefit that they get, the payback that they get to their mission. And just anecdotally from outside observations, not based on actual data or anything, it definitely feels like the agencies that are more public-facing, that have more of a general public audience, like NASA or EPA or HHS, that they transverse that learning curve faster, and that the agencies that see their audience as more inside Washington, Department of Justice, Department of State, they seem to struggle with learning that lesson and seeing the benefit. And I don't have any ideas, but I wonder if there's a way to speed up that process for those agencies, and so that they'll learn that faster. So that's one, and then it's a two-parter because my budget folks here at the Center for Effective Government would not let me live it down if I pass up the opportunity to ask, here we are in sequestration, what kind of impact do you think that'll have if it continues on open government efforts when resources and agency personnel are not even able to work full-time each month? Is that going to have a big impact, or is it going to have a minimal impact?
No one wants to answer that one.
Oh, it's a great question. I think it remains to be seen. I mean, obviously, I think that openness is enough ingrained. It's ingrained into the budget process, so there aren't separate budgets that will be cut. But that said, I mean, across the board, they're going to be cut. So I don't know. I've been told I'm getting furloughed. I think most of us are. So I think we'll have to see how it all plays out.
I just don't think we can make predictions on that, except to hope that it does get settled.
Yeah.
And soon.
No? Okay, then I'm going to take the prerogative and have one final question. I think it's fair to say that those of us in the open government community consider each of you champions of openness inside the sphere in which you work. What would you tell us we need to do from the outside as advocates to support you in what you're trying to do, making change on the inside?
I'll start. Please keep talking about this. Please keep your observations, your criticisms, your what you think is working well. If you think you see something that deserves support, please say so, and also let us know when you think it's not working.
Yeah, I think being able to hear the on the ground, so to speak, stories about what's happening really helps with, certainly from the congressional oversight standpoint, knowing if an agency's charging exorbitant fees, or they're not responding to FOIAs, or they're holding secret advisory committee meetings. I mean, those stories are what help us know, so that members can then start asking the questions and expose that and help the agency, find the right path. Or if, it needs to be, if it gets to that point, passing an amendment or passing some sort of legislation.
You have the last word.
Sure, thank you. I would say to keep working with us, be patient. We are very enthusiastic for change also. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think the VA example is a good one of iterative improvements. We're seeing as agencies get encouraged and hear good things, I think that will bring about good results. So we ask for your partnership. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And thank you. It's a terrific panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.